so much of what we're recommending and doing is to prevent, prevent future stuff. Even if you're feeling great right now, then great. Then you're starting out from a higher plane, right?
Yeah.
The
And
people
it's
who usually
easier to
see us,
reverse.
unfortunately, are the people who start not feeling well.
Yep.
Well, then you're having to undo damage done. We want to keep the damage from happening. So I think this stuff we want to talk about today is how do we keep that damage from ever happening in the first place?
Yeah. And like with mum's situation now, there was nothing I could have done actually, because it was a lot of damage was done earlier and from surgeries and from,
Right.
the stuff we were dealing with. It would have been better if I'd known this 20 years ago, and I could have, done a lot of things now. And it is my greatest frustration, even with some of my really wealthy clients that could afford to do all of the stuff. They'll have a go, and they might get a lot of stuff started, but they often just don't continue on.
Right.
Success lies in endurance. Success lies in persistence and being relentless with this approach, because there's a lot of shit that can go wrong with the body. I've seen most of it lately.
Right.
And then something can still come left field at you, right? But if like this thing that's happening to mum is left field, but because she'd been to the gym 5 days a week, because she's still going,
Right.
Because
if you took somebody, right, you mean you've worked very hard with her health, ever since her stroke, and and I'm going with that. And you're right. If she had no resilience and would have lost this massive amount of blood and been in the hospital, most 80-year-olds would not make it, right?
Yeah.
She's now 5 days later home, right? And so there is a piece to, it is never too late to start picking up this stuff and doing it. And you can still help along the way. But for those of us who are healthy right now, the key is we've got to keep ourselves healthy. And the other difficult piece of this is what is real. And it's what I think we can, I want people to have a regimen that's going to be okay. These are the basics you really do need to keep yourselves healthy, because there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah,
you read about it every single day, right? Oh, there's another supplement, there's a new supplement, there's this, and there really is a few basic things that all tie down to keeping ourselves at a healthy level. So that's going to be the key.
And this is like we discussed this before with too many supplements in the mix, and I'm guilty of it, because with myself, I'm an N of one, and I experiment with everything. I'm a biohacking fiend, and I'm sticking things in me and trying things out. Right. And sometimes I'm probably putting a little bit too much good stuff in the mix, and so this is a very difficult thing to sort of triage. What is the most important things? And of course, every single case is different, and this is why I am a fan of test, don't guess, if you can afford to do that, because when I have, and I like to test when people are healthy, because then I have a baseline to work from. Yeah. Exactly. And then I can go, okay, you had a, Dutch test last year, and now this year things are sliding off a cliff. We can see that comparison. We can see your insulin levels going up and your insulin resistance. And I can show you on a trend line, here's where you were, here's where you are now. We need to do something to reverse that, So I think getting these tests when you're healthy is a good baseline. Things, especially in things like MRIs and stuff too, which, I'd love to see people doing that prophylactically, so that we actually, be in that preventative space.
Right, you pick up stuff beforehand.
If we start looking at supplements, because they are the easiest thing to put into our regime. Obviously, there's the exercise, the diet, the circadian rhythms. We've talked about those things before, but let's focus today on supplements, and at the end we want to get into some peptides as well.
Okay.
And given the fact that everybody's different, and this is not medical advice, and we're not personalizing in any way, what are some of the favorite things that you think on a base level are really important for things people to be thinking about?
So I think when you pick apart supplements, you have to look at what goes wrong at that cellular level, right? And maybe at a systems level a little bit more so too. But we all know that there's not one person out there who does not need D3 with K2 and some magnesium. Those three, and they kind of they're synergistic to each other. You really don't want to take D3 without K2, because D3 really helps get K2 into the cells. So remember, K2 helps ensure that calcium that's transported by D3 goes to the bone and it doesn't go to your arteries. So you really want to take those two together. Most people need about 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3, unless you guys are in the sun a lot.
Wow.
Most people need about 10,000 IUs a day. Now, again, know your levels. An optimal vitamin D level somewhere between 80 and 110 in serum. I don't know. I think you guys' value looks the same on that one
too.
Yeah,
I think it is the same on that one.
So,
that's a lot. Like most doctors would go,
no, exactly. Most doctors, and it's because in medical school you're taught, oh, these are fat soluble vitamins. You have to be careful with fat soluble vitamins. It's been shown that it takes a lot of vitamin D3 to really become toxic. Even upwards of taking 100,000 IUs regularly for a while. And so most people are not going to become toxic. If you do, usually it goes away if you stop the vitamin D3. It's not any long-term unless you just kept going. Most people would start getting nauseous and symptomatic before they ever had damage done, like liver damage done. So, so the key is that, 5,000 IUs at a minimum. Most people need 10,000. You guys, summer, maybe if you're out in the sun a lot, but most of us are, under these fluorescent lights. I'm not in the sun even when it's sunny out, unfortunately. So, if you're getting a lot of sun, probably 5,000 IUs is enough. Most of us need 10,000, with about 1,000 IUs of K2. So those two together, I like to take them as a mixed supplement. That way it's one pill as opposed to trying to do both. And then, everybody's magnesium deficient. You need magnesium. Remember, magnesium is also critical to bone and cardiac and to arterial health. So magnesium 500 to 1,000 milligrams, it's going to help with constipation, but it's really going to help vascular health and bone health.
I'm seeing with magnesium, people that are taking magnesium and still not, their blood levels aren't coming up. What's up with that? Like we're taking the 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day and things just still aren't shifting. And there's different types of magnesium.
Right, different types of magnesium, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at magnesium, you definitely want to make sure you're not looking at serum magnesium, but looking at red cell magnesium. So you want to look at red cell magnesium, not just serum magnesium, because serum magnesium may have very little information. It's transported rapidly into the red cells. So you want to make sure you're looking at a red blood cell level of magnesium. And then when you see people who still don't have levels coming up orally, you can try transdermally, right? So which is either buy a transdermal magnesium, but Epsom salt, right?
Right.
You take Epsom salt baths, magnesium. That's back in the old days. Why they used Epsom salt baths was because it actually helped cardiac, they used it for cardiac disturbances because it would get transdermally absorbed. So by taking Epsom salt baths, you can get just bathing in magnesium, you can get a pretty nice transdermal absorption.
Wow.
So people who have kind of messed up guts who aren't absorbing it orally, try using transdermally. So you can buy it, and it's a little pricier to buy the transdermal versus going to your drugstore and buying a bunch of Epsom salts and throwing them in your bathtub and soaking them for half hour, right?
Yes, do that.
And then you get a massive absorption of it, right? And so it's been shown that, Epsom salt baths will relax muscles, helps cardiac dysfunction. They used to use it as a treatment for atrial fibrillation because you could get the cardiac muscle so settled down. So people forget that that's a cheap, easy way to get magnesium. So if I have a few people who I'm just not seeing it come up, I will go to transdermal forms of that.
Wow, that is gold.
Or if people don't tolerate it for some reason. There's people who sometimes their gut, even on not magnesium citrate, their gut doesn't tolerate it well, right? Then I'll go to transdermal forms.
Okay, and because there's like, if we just quickly go through some of the magnesiums, is magnesium threonate really good for the brain?
Brain, right. So magnesium threonate is the only one that really can cross the blood-brain barrier. So, I think that's a nice supplement for everybody to have in so magnesium. So I will do magnesium threonate in the daytime. Doesn't make you tired or relaxed the way other magnesiums do, but the threonate will cross the blood-brain barrier. It gives you that nice neural input. The other magnesiums do not cross the blood-brain barrier. So while they're good for other things, they're not so useful for the brain. So then you could use, so magnesium citrate is the most common magnesium. It's the cheapest, but it's the hardest on the gut.
Yeah, so it's not the best unless you're trying to get a bowel movement.
Right. If you're constipated, if you're constipated a lot, like if I'm traveling, things like that, I will do magnesium citrate, right? So because that does help with having more normal bowel movement in the morning on those days. But then you can use, fumarate, you can use glycinate. I really liked a mixed magnesium, one that sort of has a combination of those in it, honestly, where you get a little bit of each, I think is well tolerated and you get the best results with it. So that's what you usually do, a mixed magnesium.
Yeah, get the mixed one, because there's so many types. There's oxides, so many types, right? And there's bisglycinates, which one that I use a lot, and
the glycinate's great because it's really well tolerated by people, right? Doesn't cause the gut disturbances as much, so it's very well tolerated. So that's and it's not horribly expensive.
Yep, and magnesium is like 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. Like without it, the citric acid cycle isn't working properly in the you know,
Exactly.
the DNA repair is not happening, and doesn't that help with the adrenal system as well? Like the whole
Definitely helps with, you know, there's really not one system in the body that's not affected by magnesium. You know, cardiovascular health, critical for cardiovascular health. And yet we don't get it from our diet very well anymore. It's been overgrown in the soil. That used to be what we get it from. Our plants absorb it from the soil. We get it. And now food sits on the shelves, or our soil is not, we don't rotate crops. They've shown that 90% of people are deficient in magnesium. So it's one of those supplements that I think everybody needs to take anymore.
Yep. Right? And I've seen it in lots of people's blood work and stuff, that it's just keeping coming back low despite even being on supplements.
Try going to the transdermal. If you've tried switching forms and it still doesn't work, try going to a transdermal on those people.
Okay.
See what happens.
Will do. So that's magnesium. So the first one, D3K2, very good for the immune system, very good for bone health, very good for, what else is it? Again, adrenals,
again, those three, that D3K2 magnesium, you know, bones, brain, cardiovascular system, adrenal glands, immune health. You absolutely need all three of those for immune health. So, you know, K2 is really helpful for preventing arterial plaque. So that, you know, it's one of the things that helps get the calcium. So it stays in the bone, not where we want it, not in the arteries where we don't want it. So it becomes a pretty critical element too. In fact, you can actually reverse some people who have cardiac plaque by high dose K2.
Wow.
So higher dose, you actually reverse cardiac plaque, or, you know, people with atherosclerotic plaque in their vessels. So it is sort of an underutilized nutrient too. And any of you guys who are taking D3 without K2, you need to make sure you're taking them together.
Yeah, because that's actually a bit dangerous, isn't it? Because you can get calcium deposits in the wrong places.
Calcium deposits exactly.
And it should be the MK7 or the MK4 variant, the menaquinone or whatever it's called.
So the menaquinone's probably better. You know, and as a K2, but you know, when you read all the studies on MK7 versus MK4, you kind of go back and forth. I think they're probably both beneficial.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Let's look at the fat family, because we've got omega-3s, we've got our favorite plasmalogens, we've got fatty 15, which just come on our radar recently. What do you look at when you're looking at
this would be another sort of critical piece. If you look at what happens, you know, the cell membrane becomes a very, very critical player in getting things into the cell, but also we need lipids. Our brain is mostly lipids, right? If you look at people who have low cholesterol, for instance, or low plasmalogen levels, the brain is just smaller. The brain actually shrinks down. Wow. So that's why people have these cholesterols that are pushed down to 120, 140. It's horrible. And you look at brain volumes and it totally equates to that, because the brain needs cholesterol, it needs lipids. So you've got to replace lipids because those decline as we age. And so I think we've always been, you guys mostly know about omega-3s, and I've always touted omega-3s until recently.
Yeah.
Because now there's some new data on what Lisa's talking about. And I think you have a podcast coming out on this, one that got interrupted, but hopefully you got enough information there. But you know, it is something called fatty 15, which is a 15 chain carbon. And what they found is that, you know, we used to think, okay, omega-3 is super important to cellular membrane function, has all these great properties. But what they found is fatty 15, this carbon 15, actually was significantly more beneficial than the omega-3s. And in fact, where omega-3s actually were harmful to a couple of cell types, fatty 15 was beneficial to actually repair 10 out of 12 cell types. And I think omega-3s, you know, were harmful to about 3 of those. So it actually caused detriment to some of those. You know, we also know that a lot of omega-3s are oxidized. And so they actually are oxidized either in the bottle before you take them or in your gut. And so now they become an oxidative stress inducer. So bad thing, right? So now you're taking something that's supposedly helping you and it's actually doing harm. And it's probably where some of the variability, when you look at all the studies of omega-3s, there's studies like, oh, it's great. And there's studies like, no, it's horrible. It probably has to do with the way our bodies react to the omega-3s and the quality of the omega-3s. Exactly.
And that doesn't happen with plasmalogens and fatty 15?
No, so they don't get oxidized that way. Exactly. So fatty 15, you know, what it's going to lack is it doesn't have the DHA component of the lipid. So you need the DHA still. It's got an EPA portion, but not in DHA. So you're just taking, whereas omega-3 is going to usually have a complete, it's going to have DHAs and EPAs. Fatty 15 is lacking that DHA chain. So fatty 15 actually, if you look at where we get 15 chain carbons, the only place is full fat dairy. and nobody
Wow.
eats full fat dairy anymore.
I
right?
do. Love the butter.
But you look at people, everybody's, nobody eats full fat dairy, and a lot of people can't tolerate it very well either, right? Their guts don't
there's
tolerate
other
full fat
reasons.
dairy.
Yep.
Or sometimes it's more immunogenic to people. So we've seen this incremental increase in a lot of diseases that correlates to when people stopped using full fat dairy, which was, probably when I can't remember how old I was when that all started. People sort of everybody started going to non-fat milk, and and
the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
That was when I grew up. It was like
Yeah.
low fat,
low
high
fat.
sugar.
Everything's went to low fat. Exactly.
Terrible.
So I think fatty 15 is one to have on everybody's radar, and it's like one capsule a day, which is nice, right? The omega-3s we're taking like 6 of them. It's one capsule a day actually seems to be beneficial for most people.
Wow.
But then you've got to get the DHAs. And so I think that you have to add to that a plasmalogen DHA. So plasmalogens, I think you've talked to Dr. Goodnow at one of your podcasts, are also a little bit new to our understanding, but they're a really specialized type of phospholipid that's most prevalent in our brain, our heart, our lungs, eyes, kidneys, skeletal muscle. And they're really, probably the best way to think about them is a little bit like insulation on a wire. So that phospholipid membrane protects all of our neurons. And once that's gone, the neurons become exposed and damaged, just like that electric wiring becomes exposed if you took off the insulation, right?
Amazing.
And now you get seeing this misfiring, and you start seeing degradation. And so we know that lower plasmalogen levels are correlated to all sorts of diseases, particularly brain diseases like Alzheimer's. So they're really important to kind of neurotransmission. They're very important in, for you and I who are, more athletes too, for athletic function, because they allow the message to go from neuron to muscle. So you actually can react faster, and, so it helps with things that require speed, agility, coordination, which declines as we age, right? So when they look at plasmalogens, we start to, plasmalogens will escalate through fetal stage, and they actually start to taper off around 30, maybe even a little bit younger than that in a lot of people. And by 60, they've significantly declined. So you really have got to start replacing them. Probably around 30 is the best time to start replacing them. But at least by the time you're 50, you need to replacing plasmalogens. There's two different types. There's
I was going to say glia and neuro.
So there's a DHA plasmalogen, which is called prodrome neuro. And that one, I think you need, so if you're taking the fatty 15, you still need the DHA component. So you need at least 2 of that plasmalogen neuros a day. Now, if you have more brain dysfunction, then you've also got to work on white matter, which is the glial matter as well. So there's another one called plasmalogen glial, which you take at night. So in a perfect world, you would 2 of the neuro in the day, 2 of the glial at night. But I probably would say, if they're expensive, if you are pretty much a healthy person trying to stay healthy, I would do one of the fatty 15, 2 of the prodrome neuro, and probably that's going to be good enough to maintain. If you've got illnesses going on, or you've got an ApoE4 genotype, for instance, those people probably need more, because we know that those ApoE4 people have very low plasmalogen levels. And if you replace the plasmalogens in those ApoE4 people, then they don't
get Alzheimer's. Wow.
So and we know it's directly correlated, so that's kind of given as a death sentence to people. Oh, you've got the bad gene, blah, blah, blah. Right. And this totally seems to actually, in fact, those people actually maybe have some genetic advantages as long as you replace the plasmalogen. So I think those have to be on the radar too. Those are 2 of the most important lipids to keep your brain, your heart functioning, and your muscle functioning. So those are, the key organs that start to deteriorate as we age, right? Our cardiac, our brain, and then we start to get sarcopenic, we start to lose muscle. So I think that, and you can't eat those in your diet. Plasmalogens are found in sea scallops at a small amount, sea squirts, right? So Asian, a lot of the Asian people are actually eating sea squirts, and those things actually probably get more than we do. We get a lot less, but it's hard to get enough from your diet. So you really have to take it as a supplement. And I know, Dr. Goodnow's lab's the only one who makes these right now. I've had the opportunity to spend some time in his lab. He's like a mad scientist in there.
He's amazing.
He's incredible. And but they're not cheap, right?
No,
so
unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and I know this guy has worked very hard to try and bring them as much price as he can, and hopefully eventually that'll get easier. But for now, with the fatty 15 and these, I mean, you're talking about a fair amount of money. And yeah, I think these are absolutely critical to maintaining brain health.
Yeah, especially if you've got neurodegeneration and you're older, you know, or you're coming back from a stroke or anything
trying
like
to
that.
recover from anything neurologic. Exactly.
Yep. And so the neuro,
COVID, and you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, the neuro and the glia. That's really good that you've highlighted the difference there. So with the neuro having that in conjunction with the fatty 15.
Right. I think you can get, if you're healthy like us, probably that's going to get you by. I mean, I throw glia in there too, but
the glia is a bit cheaper than the neuro.
Glia is not as expensive, right?
Yeah, and we've managed to get them down here in New Zealand now, so I'm stoked.
Oh, good.
So I'll put the links in the show notes. But and it's a problem, you know. Even like, you know, I've got a client at the moment in the hyperbaric chamber, and I want them on the plasmalogens, but I know if I go, they're going to go, another supplement.
I know,
but I probably needed to.
That's why we do have to kind of get this down to what are, you know, the absolute critical. So I think, you know, if you add the plasmalogens in there for the lipids, you know, and then if we look at, you know, so the last piece there comes from things that have omega-9s. So if we want that whole full lipid profile, you also need the omega-9. And you know, right now, plant-based omega-9s are probably the easiest for us to get, like sunflower lecithin. You know, so basically that, you know, sunflower lecithin will actually give you some of the omega-9. You can eating liver can also be a good source of omega-9. So that's another lecithin source. So, you know, if those of you who want a full animal base, and then I know Dr. Goodnow is actually working on developing a different type of omega-9 from an egg yolk. That would be really beneficial to us too. But egg yolks are another really good source to be able to get some of that lecithin. I mean, eggs are really optimal food.
But then I've got clients. I had one yesterday whose albumin level was so low, and I'm like, right, you got to get on some egg white powder. And then we looked at his genetics, and it's got eggs not great. No, you know, they're not good for him, and he reacts to them. And I'm like,
lots of times,
how do I get your albumin up?
So lots of times the egg whites are the more immunogenic piece, right? So they're nice. They're high protein, low caloric. So they're nice to add the egg white protein to get the albumin in. But you can get the lecithin from the yolks alone, you know, so you can actually buy powdered egg yolk and use that to at least get the lecithin and the other things.
Get the lecithin, but you can't get the albumin from any other place,
can you? From that either, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, so you have to look for other sources of albumin, you know, or take an albumin supplement.
Is there such a thing?
There is, yeah.
So
there is an albumin supplement. Those people who have really low albumin. But lots of times, if you get the cell health, you know, Lisa, better, you'll see the albumin levels increase. Because remember, if the cell membrane is dysfunctional, then you're
leaking.
Like you need adequate copper for albumin, and you need to make sure the cell membrane is healthy. Sometimes when you get the plasmalogen levels up, I've seen the albumin improve.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. Another way to get it. You know,
right. So it might be attacking from another realm when things aren't, you know, when he doesn't have the capability of that. Because if he's eating enough protein, he should be getting enough albumin. He's
not enough protein. And not absorbing.
Just got to push him. Yeah, he's got to push his protein up.
Yeah, and that's where you have to look at the digestive enzymes and the betaine and things.
Right. So yeah,
how safe is betaine? Like betaine is stomach acid for those who don't know, and it declines as we get older, and certain genetic makeups have less of these digestive enzymes and betaine, and can't break down their food as well. Is there a risk though with betaine because it is stomach acid?
I mean, betaine is also known as trimethylglycine, so it's it's a very potent methylator. Most people are poor methylators, but there are some people who you're going to hypermethylate them. So, you know, so hypermethylation can be an issue, and those people can get a little bit wiggy and anxious and start and feel badly on it. That is a more rare case phenomenon. So in general,
is the acid side of the equation though, like, you know, having the acidic stomach, you know, like we're dealing with a gastrointestinal bleed is a
that
betaine,
should not be an issue. No,
don't take it out of the.
It's more probably a few people who you'll hypermethylate, but the acidic, should not be an issue.
Okay, so it's more from the TMG side of it, the hypermethylation.
So I think in general, from a digestive enzyme piece, it's useful.
Okay, yeah, because I have quite a lot of clients who have digestive issues, and I do put the pancreatic enzymes in, and then the betaine, and especially in my older population.
That should be helpful in those people.
Yeah. Okay, and copper you mentioned. Now copper, my research on copper is also like bad, terrible, as bad as mercury, fantastic, got to have it. And I'm like, huh?
So you really need
small amount.
You need copper. Low copper levels are going to look just like MS. You get neurologic dysfunction, and especially all these people are taking a lot of zinc.
Yeah.
So you have to have a balance between zinc and copper, right? So the literature on copper comes from the bad things if you get it out of balance. So if you get too much copper, then there is going to be an issue. But in general, copper is actually a beneficial thing, at a low level. Now, it is one of those things I do like to test, intracellular copper levels before I just throw people on copper, right?
And you can do that in the plasma, or
yeah, we get a blood test. So I know SpectraCell has one, Vibrant Micronutrients has one, so you can look at copper in intracellular levels of copper with those tests.
Okay.
Then you want to make sure that zinc to copper in a 1-to-1 balance. That's kind of one of the key pieces there, is to have zinc and copper. A lot of your people are taking a lot of zinc, like for COVID or whatever. They might need a small amount of copper. They might be getting that balance off. But it is one of those things where it's tough to know.
Without testing.
It's where there's a peptide called GHK copper, where the copper is bound to GHK, where you're not going to do, because the copper's bound, it doesn't create the issues, but it helps restore levels. So, but that's, a much more difficult way to get it.
Yeah, well,
I don't just throw copper in very often into the mix without testing levels of it.
Yeah, I'm doing the topical GHK. So
topical
that's
GHK,
a good way.
And that's a great way, right? Because now you're not going to throw unbound copper into the mix, but your body will actually, break it off and use what it needs. But that's a great, it's to use transdermal copper, GHK copper, because it's so good for your skin too, So you get all these benefits of skin. You get some transdermal absorption of the GHK copper, and it's a nice, safe way to keep copper levels stable, but it's bound to the GHK, so you don't get this serum copper floating around. So I love GHK copper face creams, and that you can buy. Like Lorraine Picard, who discovered GHK copper, it's like reverse skin aging, I think it's called. And you can buy a little vial of, this bright blue GHK copper and mix it with a little of your face cream for like nothing. I mean, it's really inexpensive.
Yeah, I've just bought a whole lot of it, and it'll last me the next couple of years. And I just
great for wound healing. Too. Like if you have a wound that won't heal, foot ulcers and diabetics, things like that, amazingly beneficial for healing.
Okay, and you can just put it into any cream, which
you just put it into
at 1%.
Yeah, that's a cheap way. He sells it in all sorts of creams too, but you can really literally buy that
the little vial,
strong, bright blue vial, and add it to something, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
You have a patient state, right?
Yeah,
so a nice cheap way of getting it. And transdermal, remember, just like magnesium, transdermally absorbed things. It's a great way to get absorption.
Yeah, and we tend to think that transdermal is not going to work.
I know, but it's right.
It does,
great, right?
It does. I mean,
that's why it's scary, the things that we are like our water and things like that we're not even thinking about. The contaminants in water that we're actually transdermally absorbing those, right? So transdermal absorption can be both good and bad. But
the chlorines and things of the world and all the other horrible stuff that's in our rivers and things. Ooh.
So let's add one more fat to the mix, and that's choline.
Choline,
right? So choline you really need as well. You need choline to maintain the integrity of cells for liver function. We know that acetylcholine is one of the main neurotransmitters, right? So that's going to help memory, cognitive performance. We know that choline, along with folate, helps get rid of homocysteine, which is when homocysteine builds up, that damages
cardiovascular
heart disease and stroke, right? So and especially anybody who's pregnant, you can get choline again. Liver, if you eat liver, salmon has some.
Eggs
have it, so those are great sources of it. Or take it as a supplement as well if you're not getting those things in your diet as much.
And that goes well with,
I don't know, I'm not a big liver fan, but
no, not eating it. I'll have a pill of it.
Exactly. So I take it as an organ meat supplement.
Me too. Me too. Much better way. So choline, lecithin, plasmalogens,
two plasmalogen neuro, and one of the fatty 15. And I think you covered that sort of lipid base with the sort of basics, right?
What about olive oil?
And olive oil. Easy one to add in, right? Tablespoon of olive oil. Super beneficial source of fatty acids. I mean, I think, back in Hippocrates' day, Greek poet Homer called it like liquid gold, so even back then they realized that it was like, Hippocrates, that was what he used to heal a whole lot of things. So even way back then, they knew how important it was. Remember, it has to be extra virgin olive oil, right? It has to be good, expensive, high grade extra virgin olive oil. But here's something that has, you know, a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, easy, inexpensive, and, you know, and was going to really, again, that's another thing that's going to really help that immune system and inflammation, reduces blood pressure, regulates glucose, improves endothelial function.
Glucose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you'll see improvement in glucose parameters in people just by adding a tablespoon of olive oil dose. So that's an easy one to add in too.
Wow.
So that's, you know, another beneficial fatty acid. Yep. I'm glad you brought that one up because we forget about it.
Yeah. What about carbon 60? I haven't really, I did some research years ago and I've forgotten half of what I learned, but I think it was C60. Do you know anything about that?
So, you know, I think there might be some benefits with carbon 60 in certain disorders. I wouldn't put it on your radar as something that, you know, because it's another one that, you know, there's a lot of Instagram and podcasts and stuff. It's probably beneficial for some cases. It's not one that you should have on your radar as a supplement that most people need.
You're right. Not in our baseline,
especially if you're covering these other bases here.
Yeah. Okay. So let's carry on down the train of things. Gut health, hugely important system.
Right.
I'm dealing with that one right now. Lactulose and trehalose are two of your favorites that I've adopted from you.
So gut health is tough, right? We know the gut microbiome is important for everything. And, you know, one of the hard things is there's probably not the perfect probiotic out there.
No, not single.
There's a lot of probiotics out there. There's probably not the perfect one. I think I like a bifidobacterium there. But if you look at how do we get our own gut healthy, it's really two pieces, you know, I'm going to throw in two things first. That is that you've got to have butyrate in the gut for anything else to work.
Yeah.
So I love to add to my gut regimen tributyrin,
which is hard to get.
It's hard for you guys to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tributyrin is basically a probutyrate. It turns into butyrate in the lower intestine. If you just take butyrate orally, not much of it gets to the lower intestine. And then you can use short chain fatty acids that are in like something like TUDCA. I don't know if you guys can get TUDCA.
Yeah, can get TUDCA.
But TUDCA is a great way to help those bile acids, like for your mom right now, just to get, you know, normal bile function. So I really like TUDCA and tributyrin for most people, especially when it's starting to restore the gut. They might not need to be on it forever, but you know, I take those pretty regularly to help my gut
health.
Yeah, you get the bile acids and the butyrate to the gut. Now you've got the gut milieu where you need it. Now, how do I maintain that? So lactulose, you know, really, lactose has been around the medical world for forever. Used for constipation, used for people with liver disease, but it actually has been found to be kind of the perfect prebiotic probiotic. So it really helps to make colonocytes healthy, actually kills off bad bacteria, helps good bacteria grow. So it's you know, when we talk about prebiotics, those are what are allowing the good bacteria to stay in our gut. And so really prebiotics I like better than probiotics, but this actually does both. Sometimes you need to throw probiotics back into the mix for a while. But once you get the gut healthy, you shouldn't need to keep taking probiotics as much. And so by using lactulose, once you get that level, it helps maintain it. It's a tablespoon a day. It's a sickly sweet. You'll agree. It's super sweet. I kind of like it, but people who don't like sweet stuff hate it. Yeah. You know, but it's a little tablespoon a day of that can be, you know, and especially if you have any chronic constipation, super helpful. It also helps magnesium and calcium get absorbed. So that may be an issue with like that gut absorption person. Put them on a little lactulose, so you'll absorb the calcium magnesium a little bit better in that person.
Man, you just have so much nuance. Like I know a lot of the stuff, but not the nuance. It's just like every time I talk to you, it's just next level of the information.
As studies and studies keep coming out. I mean, the lactulose stuff is really new. I mean, I think that stuff, I mean, all the research on lactulose kind of for longevity. I mean, honestly, if you just Google lactulose and longevity, there's some great longevity data on it.
And we can get it here. We can get it without prescription.
You guys don't even need it. See, we need a prescription here in the US.
Yeah, we don't. We can do it over prescription, but we can actually go to the chemist and buy lactulose. It's called Lavolax.
Finally something.
Yes, finally something that's here that's not over there easy, because you have to actually prescribe it over there. And
it's inexpensive, right? I mean, it's
very inexpensive. Yeah, like $15 a big liter of bottle.
Like here, so big bottle and it's like $6. You know, so
rush out and get some at the chemist.
I mean, this is a really easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And then, so you know, lactose is basically a sugar, but it's not.
It's not a bad sugar. Yeah,
right. It's not a bad sugar, and the same thing's true of trehalose. So trehalose, which is basically like two glucose molecules together. It's actually made when a plant is stressed, it makes trehalose. So that's really where it comes from. But it's a disaccharide that has it actually prevents glucose spikes. So if you eat sugar and you sprinkle trehalose on like your cake, you'll actually blunt the glycemic impact of it. Not that you should eat cake, but you can cook with it as your sweetener. You can use it as a sweetener in your coffee. The more, the better.
I have it
but we know one of the ways trehalose works is by restoring the gut microbiome. Wow. So it not only helps with glucose spikes with carbohydrate intake, but we know that it's really, really healthy to restore the gut microbiome. So that combination of those two sugars seems to be really good for repairing the gut.
Is it a probiotic or is it a more like on the tributyrin side of the?
It's more like a prebiotic. So it's more
prebiotics. So feeding the good
colonocytes, so that you create this perfect environment for the good beneficial anaerobes to thrive.
Because a lot of people take probiotics and they get a reaction. They get, you know, if they've got like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, or things like that, they can actually, like, you need to go back and fix the gut before you put the probiotics in, so to speak.
Well, and I was told, I said, if I'm throwing all these good bacteria into my gut, but the gut milieu is not right for them, they're not going to do anything. They're going to be dead in a minute, right? You have to first get the gut healthy before probiotics are even going to have any benefit.
Yeah.
You know, if you have an aerobic gut because you have leaky gut and sort of an aerobic gut environment, that good beneficial anaerobes don't survive, right?
Yeah.
So now you throw a bunch of stuff in there. The only thing that survives is the aerobes. And now you get an overabundance of the aerobic bacteria. So now you get gassy and bloated and feel horrible.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's why I, you know, again, I like testing, microbiome testing.
That's
so
microbiome,
we do the complete,
so sort of
the complete microbiome mapping thing.
Yes, you can see, right?
Yeah,
So
and you can see
knowledge is always power, right?
Yep. And then you can throw the right things in the mix, you know.
So a tablespoon of lactulose, trehalose, I like to get up like 15 grams 3 times a day. That's a lot. A little scoop of it's about 5 grams, but throw it in your coffee. You can cook with it. You could, you know, you can put it on fruit. You can, you know, so it's really a nice.
So 3 scoops a day.
You know,
3 scoops a day would be good. Like, and I have that in my range. So if you're looking for it, it's in the shop because there's nowhere else to be found in New Zealand. You'll be struggling to find it. So check that out.
It's a little hard to find here too.
I have managed to get a supply, so that's really good. Okay, so let's carry on down the
so we got gut. List. So gut, TUDCA, tributyrin, lactulose, and trehalose. Now we've got a gut taken care of. Throw some you can throw probiotics in the mix if you need to, but those are going to be not. We're talking about mainstay stuff everybody needs. We want to keep the gut healthy, right?
Yep. What else on like the B complex, the B vitamins?
So B vitamins.
We have to talk those because they're huge.
So everybody needs B vitamins, especially methylfolate, methyl B12, and probably riboflavin. I sort of like just a good B complex. But you look at a lot of genetic testing, Lisa, and we have so many people who are poor methylators. Those people definitely need extra methyl tetrahydrofolate, methyl B12. Methyl B12 is not well absorbed orally. It's better done as a sublingual or as an injection. So little lozenge
not through the gut.
Right. So it doesn't have to go through the gut.
Yeah.
And then riboflavin. More than half the population is deficient in riboflavin. And remember, if you are deficient in riboflavin, you can't metabolize iron appropriately. So now iron gets deposited where you don't want it. You get these hemosiderin deposits where you don't want it. We need iron. I mean, iron gets a little bit of a bad rap for cancer and things like that, but we do need some iron to function normally. And so, from normal methylation patterns, you need some degree of iron. So you have to make sure that iron is absorbed correctly, which means having riboflavin along with iron if you're going to give iron. So if you ever have somebody like your mom, if we need to do an iron infusion on because iron's really low, you want to make sure riboflavin levels are high enough as well.
Wow,
right? So you want to add in a little riboflavin in there.
And
that's going to really help. Those are going to keep methylation appropriate. Even if you don't, add in things like SAMe or TMG, then we can keep methylation pretty good with those 3 vitamins. So I think so important for brain, so important for energy, host of cell functions just by taking the B vitamins. So I think that those go along with our D3, K2, magnesium as sort of basics that you have to have. right?
Yeah, and this is the stuff that I call food, not supplements, really. And so, and
the
often
those are the micronutrients you need to sort of survive.
Yeah, they're just missing in our diet. And some with the B vitamins often do a B complex, and then I might pull out depending on the results of what
you'll pull in some extra to that. That's exactly what I do. I do a B complex to them, and then if you see depending on some results, then you might add a little more methyl B12 or methylfolate. But I think a lot of people can get by with just a really good B complex. Make sure it's a good high quality one.
Yeah, and if you're
have that
building. And this is really important, like for things like weight loss too, like the carnitine and the B2, probably not one of the top, like not in the absolute top baseline, but those if those things are missing, you're not going to be able to be burning fat. You're not be able to do as well on the weight loss front.
Put acetyl-L-carnitine into a pretty high up one that I use a lot in the longevity realm.
Yep.
Or what's known as Alcar. Alcar sort of got its big boost really in the athlete population, right? Because it boosts energy so much and function. But honestly, acetyl-L-carnitine is I would say it's a conditionally essential nutrient that a lot of us are deficient in. And especially if you're somebody who is an athlete and you or has some brain dysfunction, or you're older, I think that we see acetyl-L-carnitine deficiencies in older people a lot. Remember, it's an amino acid that is synthesized by our body. We get it from red meat and dairy, back to our dairy. So if you're not eating a lot of red meat, so if you look at a lot of older people who lots of times can't chew as well or whatever, they don't eat, a very big portion. You put their steak in front, but they're not eating a huge portion. Since those are the only two places you really get L-carnitine from, lots of times you do need to supplement it with people. Now, if you're eating a great diet with a lot of red meat and a lot of full fat dairy, you probably can get by without taking the supplement. I tend to not eat tons of red meat. I just am not a huge fan of it. And so I take L-car as a supplement. And remember, it's like when they look at Alzheimer's, what they found is that there was a 40% reduction in Alzheimer's people of this, what's called carnitine acetyltransferase. And that's an enzyme that works to help get carnitine into the cell. So, that low Alcar, I think this probably has to do with the plasmalogen deficiencies too. But I think that if you're going to really try and support acetylcholine function, you need Alcar in there too, acetyl-L-carnitine.
For that weight loss
about the fats, remember, it's a fatty acid. It shuttles the fatty acids into the mitochondria.
That's the piece that
it's a shuttle,
weight
right?
loss can be
they get it's what gets those fatty acids that were just talked about into the mitochondria where you need them to make ATP. So I'm putting that, in
quite
most
high up.
People, I put that pretty high up particularly as they get older, or my athletes, anybody who's really, high demand in life. So I will put that one kind of into we'll include that in the fats because it acts as that shuttle, right? And then, I think the other thing almost everybody needs is N-acetylcysteine. I don't know if you guys can get NAC.
We can.
But N-acetylcysteine,
in my range.
Remember, all of us are exposed to so much toxins out there. I mean, life is just full of toxins. And the problem is that we need glutathione to help eliminate these toxins. Glutathione, I know a lot of people do IV glutathione. They do liposomal glutathione. The problem with glutathione is that it can't actually get into the cell. Extracellular, it doesn't get intracellularly. So when you give serum glutathione, it's actually not getting where you want it. Now, it does break down into cysteine, which gets into the cell. So, when you're giving these glutathione, you're just basically boosting cysteine levels. So that's how it works. So instead, just take N-acetylcysteine. It's a lot cheaper, easier to take. So, they've shown that even a single dose of NAC increased glutathione levels in people, and really helpful in neurodegenerative diseases, anybody who's been through has immune dysfunction. But when we look at hormone metabolism, for instance, to get rid of some of the bad estrogens, you need glutathione. So you have to make sure those levels are adequate. I think N-acetylcysteine 1 to 2 grams, probably 1.2 grams a day is going to be high in my, I talk about the things I take. I take N-acetylcysteine every day.
And I think a higher
alcohol,
dose.
I'm not going to advocate drinking alcohol, but if you drink alcohol, you absolutely have to take N-acetylcysteine.
Yep, that's what I do if I'm naughty.
If you're going to drink, do some N-acetylcysteine, exactly, because it's going to help that liver to detoxify the alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. And the glutathione pathway and the methylation pathway are sort of in competition with each other, aren't they? So if we push too much on the methylation, sometimes it can detract from well, actually, no, the body prioritizes the glutathione pathway, doesn't it? So the methylation will fall off. So, but you want to keep pushing on both of those pathways, not just one of those pathways.
Yeah, I think you need to keep both of those upregulated, and and people, when you're on medications, remember, there's certain medications, for instance, that need methylation, right? So now you've overwhelmed that pathway. You've got to utilize the glutathione pathway to get rid of some of these toxins they're exposed to. Environmental toxins, like stuff that comes from car exhaust fumes and, and Roundup, the BPAs, all those things. Really, you've got to upregulate that glutathione pathway. And I think that, we look at the increase in Parkinson's disease. I don't know if you guys are seeing as much there, but here in the US, tons and tons of Parkinson's, probably very, very much related to some environmental toxicities. And so this is something I think, if we're looking at protecting our brains, I think you need to get acetylcysteine levels up.
Yeah. Is there any downside with acetylcysteine, like any dangers or contraindications for that one?
No,
not really.
Not really.
Even in the cancer patients, I mean, cancer's probably shouldn't go there, because it's like with cancer, you have to have everything that's opposite of what's good. Basically,
I think you don't want to be taking N-acetylcysteine when people are actively going under chemotherapy, because sometimes that detoxification actually makes the chemotherapy less effective.
Yeah.
But after that, so once people are done with chemotherapy, then it can actually be important. So I think the only time it's really contraindicated in cancers is during active chemotherapeutic treatments, where you actually want toxins sitting around, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, you want to keep them in the cell longer, and therefore don't push the glutathione pathway.
Gotcha. You want to scrub detox. I mean, that you're right. I mean, that's the downside of cancer, is we're trying to kill everything and not kill you, which is not always easy.
Okay, so anything else on the list of the vitamins before we hop over onto the peptide side of the equation? There's vitamin C, and there's some
of the basic micronutrients, but I think a good multivitamin probably is going to get you pretty far with that stuff.
The vitamin C, though, I did want to touch on briefly, because there's this I don't know if you know this guy, Morley Robbins, I think his name is. Talks about ascorbic acid being not a bad form of vitamin C, and of course that's the most prevalent form that we have available on our shelves. I use a complex that's got bioflavonoids, and I try to get things like a whole lemon if I've got access to it, and put it in my smoothies and have half a lemon a day. That way, that's in the whole complex sort of thing. Makes sense to me, but I don't know. What's your take on the ascorbic acid, and where we're getting some of our vitamin C's from? Like, I don't know if you're aware of them, that some of them are being produced by mold and things like that. And corn that's got glyphosate, and so there's some issues. Like cheap vitamin C, probably not the one to go for.
Yeah, I think you do have to be careful with vitamin C, where it's coming from. What is the source of it that you're getting it from? I think you just have to be a little bit careful, but like you do with most supplements, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff out there that's not, it's not made well, they did a study on Amazon. 60% of stuff on Amazon was fake. It had really, 60% was high. It was not even what it was said to be in it. So you have to be careful with those things. I don't know that ascorbic acid's bad. I really don't. I think, as a form of vitamin C, we've used it for a long time. I don't know if I agree with him that it's necessarily bad. I certainly agree with you. If you can get vitamin C from other sources, better. But if not, I think that with a good compounded ascorbic acid vitamin C, I think you can be fine. Honestly.
Got it. Yep. Okay. Right. So let's jump over into the peptides briefly, because I know you got to go in a minute. And this is a bloody podcast in itself, and really we probably should dedicate a whole podcast to peptides. Not really available down under yet. I mean, there is in Australia more, but pretty bloody difficult to get in New Zealand. I hope that's going to change soon. I do manage to get some through. But peptides, what are they? And why do we need to have them on our radar?
So basically, remember that peptides are small, short chains of amino acids. So less than 50 amino acids is a peptide, more than 50 is a protein. So they just kind of fall into that same protein realm. And I sort of look at peptide replacement for longevity the same way I look at hormone replacement. Replace what you're losing. So the reason we need hormones is because when we were young, we had them. When we're old, we don't. Same thing's true about peptides. When we're young, we have certain peptides. So there are two different types of peptides. There's manufactured peptides that we don't make. They have benefits, right? We have all sorts of benefits from peptides. And there's peptides that we make, like insulin. Two of the most important come from the thymus gland. So when we're babies, we have this giant gland in our chest called the thymus gland. And we know that thymus gland starts to shrink at puberty. By the time you're my age, it's not even existent anymore. So it's not making two of our most important peptides, which are thymus and alpha-1. Thymus and alpha-1 is a peptide that's super important for immune function. So our immune function declines as we age. If I replace thymus and alpha-1, I can keep at the same level I was when I was young. I should have a good, healthy, robust immune system. When we're at puberty, our immune systems are very robust. They start declining after that. So basically, replace what you're losing. Replace TA1 and the other thymic peptides, thymus and beta-4, which is something that helps with tissue repair and regeneration. So what I like to do is 4 times a year, I put people on a course of thymic peptides for like 6 weeks, 3 times a week, a little TA1, TB4. I'm replacing what's lost. So I look at peptides, replace what's lost. The other peptide that gets lost is BPC, stands for body protective compound. It comes from the gut. So the gut makes BPC in response to injury. When we're little, we make tons. So you're little and you hurt yourself, it's better in a week. You're old and you hurt yourself and it's months and months and months. So if you could just get more BPC on board, you're going to heal faster. So 4 times a year, I do a combination of BPC, thymus and alpha-1, and thymus and beta-4, replacing what I've lost. So I keep those levels up to where they were, just like you might with estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, right? What else do we lose as we age? Growth hormone. So growth hormone starts to decline.
But we can't just take growth hormone itself.
Taking growth hormone is very difficult. There's when you give exogenous growth hormone, you're not really, it's not natural the way our body makes it. So what you want to do is we use what are called growth hormone secretagogues, which basically tell our own pituitary to just make and release a little bit more. So we can get some nice little surge of growth hormone at night when we're sleeping, which is the most important time. That's when we repair. When we're young and regenerating, we've got lots of growth hormone. When we're old, we don't have it anymore.
So this is like ipamorelin and
so CJC, ipamorelin, or tesamorelin, ipamorelin. So that combination, and what I have people do with that is if they can afford it, stay on it continuously 5 out of 7 days a week. You can cycle that too, but really that's one of those ones that we just like your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, we want to keep it at a level that was where our baseline levels in our 20s, basically. Okay.
Yep. And so, you got mitochondrial peptides.
And the last piece, would be 4 times a year. I'm going to give back the mitochondrial peptide. So as I age, I lose mitochondria. The way mitochondria tell me I need more mitochondria is probably by producing a peptide, several peptides, but one that we can have access to is called MOT-SC. MOT-SC is a peptide made by the mitochondria. So if my mitochondria is stressed, they make MOT-SC. That tells my nucleus to make more mitochondria.
Gotcha.
If I don't have very many mitochondria left, I make less MOT-SC. Wow. So I don't get new mitochondria. So as I get old, I can't make new mitochondria. Remember, mitochondria are making ATP. That's your energy.
That's our energy level, guys.
Our energy.
When you're fatigued.
So think about the tissues that need ATP the most: your brain, your heart, your heart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got think about 4 times a year replace that.
You know? So for things like long COVID, where your mitochondria are being
hammered, your mitochondria get
yeah.
hammered by viral illnesses like COVID, hammered, right? Or if you overtrain, and that's really hard to recover, especially if you're older.
Yep.
So
these are all the things that show, like, you know, we get older and then we start not being able to exercise like we used to. And this is why. And so you can give this stuff back.
Right. You can give back what we're losing. And that's exactly right. When people are like, oh, why do I need this stuff? It's because you made it when you were young and you don't now.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, there's no way that your body's all of a sudden going to just stay at those levels. It's just not going to. Yeah. So we decline and we age and we don't recover. You know,
what about LL37? That's another.
So LL37 is an antiviral peptide. So I'm not going to put that into my longevity realm. That one's going to be one you're going to pull in more often if somebody is sick. I'm trying to treat a virus, right?
So long COVID or
if I look at the last peptide that I would say put into your longevity piece, it's epitalon, which is made. So one of the other things that goes away as we age is our pineal gland. So our pineal gland senses light, dark. It sets our circadian rhythm. That's why older people get all screwed up in their circadian rhythms, right? So the pineal gland calcifies as we age. And I was listening to a talk by a guy on pineal gland. He's like, there's just nothing you can do about it. Well, there is. You can give back what the pineal gland makes. So epitalon is pineal peptide. It's called a bioregulator peptide. So it actually changes our DNA. So twice a year, you can do a course of like 5-10 milligrams 3 times a week. You do that for about 10 days, twice a year. and you're going to keep the pineal function going. I'm going to get a nice circadian balance going. So again, I replaced my mitochondrial stuff, replaced my growth hormone, I replaced my repair peptides, the thymic peptides and BPC, and replaced my pineal peptides. So now I've kept things where they were when I was young, right? So you cycle those again twice a year for the epitalon, 4 times a year for MODA-C, you know, and now I'm going to stay hopefully at those levels where I can repair and recover and I don't get hit. When I do get hit by something like COVID or, you know, or you fall and break your hip, then you got to maybe add more into the mix. But you know, those are the baselines that I'm going to do all the time to keep my body at a stable level.
And there's some that are, you know, Bioregulator, the stuff coming out of Professor Cavinson's labs that that, you know, I've been studying, you went to the conference and everything.
Right.
And some of these are sort of oral and these are easier for us to get. And so I am interested in these because, you know, some of the other ones that we've mentioned are bloody difficult to get if they don't have you as their personal physician and they're not, you know.
So like Thymolin, which is an oral thymic peptide. Now, you know, the hardest thing to me about the bioregulators is there's not a lot of data yet on them.
Yeah.
Only data is out of Cavinson's lab.
Yeah.
But the thing about bioregulators is basically they're short chains of amino acids. The problem with peptides is most of them, when you take them orally, they get broken down. But these are such small, they're 2-3 amino acids that that they typically don't get broken down the same way. Then they can insert themselves in the DNA and repair things. I think there probably is value to them. I wish that we had more science besides Dr. Cavinson's research out of them. You know, so we have just the Russian research. But I do think, you know, I do think they have benefits, and that is a nice way because you can do the same thing. If you look at the bioregulators, you replace the thymic peptides, you replace the pineal peptides, you place, you know, so epitalon and thymolin, and you can use those, cycling them through. You know, and you never want to be on more than 4 bioregulators at a time. So you do like a 6-week course, about 4 of them, and then you might switch to a different one. But you're trying to look at them as, okay, this is what I'm going to use to keep this part of my body the same way it was. So I do think there's value to them. I would love to see a little more data.
Yeah, especially just because they're easier to get because they come in pill form rather than a sub-Q.
Pill form orally, you can buy them online. I think certainly they're better than at this point. They certainly are not bad for you.
Yeah,
and probably are good.
And the BPC, things like BPC, which we've been trying to get this week for mum's healing of her gut, the oral, because we've got the BPC 157 injectables, but we're dealing with an intestinal digestive thing. So yeah,
so BPC
so for things like
for
that.
The gut works much better orally. For other injuries, works better subcutaneously.
Yep.
You know, so if I'm using it for longevity purpose, I usually do it subcutaneously. But for gut repair, bar none, you just want to do like twice a day orally.
Yeah, so we've got some of that en route. And then the other peptides, semaglutide, I know it's probably not on the high list, but a very, very interesting one, also quite expensive one, but very powerful for people who really
so I am going to say that does fall into my, that is one of my on my list of longevity peptides, because when you look at what the GLP-1, so semaglutide is what's called a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. They're used for diabetes and now for weight loss. But if you look at what they do for brain, they're neuroprotective. For kidney, they're renal protective. They're gut protective. They actually help build muscle. I know Peter Tia just did a big post about that the GLP-1 agonists are bad because you lose muscle. You don't. They actually help you build muscle unless you don't take enough protein in. What happens is the GLP-1 agonists reduce your appetite so much that you just don't eat enough. And so you get protein deficient. But if you can keep people's protein intake up, you'll actually preferentially lose fat and build muscle. So we kind of talked about them years ago as being something that we should sort of think about and you don't even need a super high dose, just a small dose regularly for its protective effects on every single organ system. Every organ system. 0.1 milligram. Like you don't need a lot.
Yeah. They do.
The weight loss dose is like 2.5 milligrams, but you need honestly like 0.1 milligram just for its protective effects. And then it doesn't end up being that costly to do.
Yeah. Okay. That's something to put on people's radar, because there are a lot of people just absolutely struggling with weight loss. And of course, we need to go to the diet.
It's incredible. This bar none has been a game changer in my practice for weight loss.
Yeah,
you know,
I've seen some pretty amazing
incredible.
things. Yeah, it's just so difficult to access here. So if people are wanting to talk about these peptides and really need the sort of next level in peptide support, they can, you know, can come through me and I'll, you know, get you under Dr. Yurth here. So because they aren't cheap generally, and there are some issues getting them in, but we have managed to. And if you're in the States, then you need to go to the Boulder Longevity Institute and get your peptides sorted, because that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, you do want a good source for the peptides. You know, you and I have been around this because it is hard in Australia and New Zealand to get them. You know, so finding good sources as much as you can.
Yeah, I'm still working on that one. and you know, I'm experimenting on myself with different things, but it's a space that I hope in the next 2 years is going to explode, and then the price might come down and the accessibility might come, you know,
more, exactly.
Although I'm not holding my breath in New Zealand. It's one reason.
I keep trying to get Lisa to move to the United States. So.
Yeah, I'm coming to Colorado. Yeah, definitely. For a lot of these things, I do get totally frustrated. Betsy, you've been absolutely fabulous today. I won't hold you up any further, and I better go and check on that mother of mine and see if she's okay. Is there anything else we should add, and where can people find you? People must follow you on Instagram. Like, I love my daily dose of Dr. Yurth on Instagram, because I like, here's my daily little lecture while I'm just doing something.
Yeah, I do try and like guys throw just like new studies that I've run into on the Instagram. So follow me at Dr. Yurth. Join as Lisa and I've worked on a couple projects on this, but just educational stuff. Both of us are passionate about giving you guys the education so you can, you know, tackle this stuff. You know, like I said, Lisa was just fighting with doctors just today. You know, just yesterday, you know. But you know, you've got to be able to kind of be able to talk the talk and get, so we have a BLI.academy. Sign up, join our Human Optimization Academy, where we do lectures and we do Q&As that are so interesting and so fun. People ask such great questions. So join BLI.academy so you can learn some of this stuff. We're gonna have a whole thing on peptides, whole course on peptides. And then if you just go to boulderlongevity.com, you can put inquiries there as well. But definitely join the Optimization Academy. I think that you'll love the stuff we're putting out there. Again, I try and teach just off scientific data and not, you know, I'm not involved. It is
absolutely,
or, you know.
It's absolutely gold. And we've done a course on there called Hack Your Health Span, How Not to Die.
How Not to Die.
I love the title.
I like that title the best.
So we did that little course, and so people can go and grab that on there. But the BLI Academy is honestly like super, super valuable. Like, you know, it just, I mean, you're talking, like, I just want people to understand, you're talking here to one of the greatest cellular health minds, doctors on the planet, and you get access via her BLI Academy to this information for bugger all. It's very, very cheap. If you're not joining, you're an absolute idiot. Go and join and keep listening out, and go back and go and listen to all our other podcasts that we've done together. There's a reason why Dr. Yurth is the number one in my family health. You know, I have like 15 doctors in the mix with mum's cancer journey, for example, but Dr. Yurth is the boss. She's the boss.
Oh. Well, you're the boss, but I'll be a little Sherpa guide along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that is, I mean, what the point she makes here is you guys have to be the boss still, and then find somebody who will just discuss things with you. Yeah, you know, a lot of times Lisa brings things up to me, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. We probably should consider that, or you know, it's like, you know, but you have to have an understanding this, so you're gonna have to learn this stuff, because you said, like, you know, she went and met with surgeons yesterday, and you know, nobody would give you time of day. You've got to be able to defend your case.
Oh yeah, like just on a brief like that, just to so that people get this picture in the hospital system, at least here, they're all very nice, they're friendly, they're arrogant as hell sometimes. And yesterday I prepared 2 hours. I was researching MRI diagnostics. I had the research and talked to Dr. Yurth. I've been, and I come to there to say to these guys, because you got to think they got 2 minutes and they're on to the next patient, and the theatre's waiting for them. So they're under massive pressure. I get that. But my mum nearly died twice this week. So I need your attention for 2 seconds, please. And I couldn't get it. And what are you going to do? We're just going to sit and wait. And I'll go, right, her hemoglobin is down at 84 after, you know, being at 74 and having to have a transfusion, and you're just going to sit and wait for another bleed? And we can't do the colonoscopy, and we can't. And I said, well, can't we do an MRI? My research says that an MRI,
MRI
he walked off
safe.
before I even got half of that out of my mouth, right? And I was like fuming. But this is the thing. And I had I have a friend in the industry, shall we say, and she's going, say these words, use these things, say it in this order, and because this is what's happening in their mind. They're triaging things.
Right.
And 81-year-old ladies don't come probably that high up on the list, you know, with multiple comorbidities and stuff, and resources being completely depleted in our system. So if you have a loved one, just fight like shit.
Right. I mean, and you have to have knowledge, right? And that's what we're trying to do is, you know, give you guys the knowledge so you can go in there with, here's an idea, here's a thought, here's something, you know, that I might be able to do on my own.
And then I still got stonewalled, but and like, you know, they send me MRI won't help, and I've got the research saying it will help, and I'm like thinking in my head, yeah, apparently she didn't need an MRI 18 months ago when she had a brain tumor either, you know, and it took me 3 weeks to get one then. I didn't say that because I was trying to be polite at the same time, but I'm telling you guys so that you guys don't get in those situations. Hopefully. Thank you so much, Betsy. It's been absolutely wonderful.
All right, take a nap.
I might go back because this morning I was woken at 5 a.m. with the bell going, you know, mum in a situation again, and I just raced out of the bed and I'm like, I'm going to have a heart attack. So I've got my Cortef and my GABA and all my things going in today.
All right. Thanks again for having me, Lise. Talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.